Hello, everybody. Greetings from Sarajevo, here in Bosnia-Herzegovina. I've been traveling in the Balkan region in the last week, from Belgrade in Serbia down to here and various countries to get a sense of how the Balkans has been evolving over time. And this spot is a very important spot that I've always wanted to visit since I was a child, which is the spot in which the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were killed. In fact, it's so exciting to be here because that street in front is exactly where the entourage drove one direction, missed one attempt at bombing the car, gave a speech, and then came back this way, and the car made a wrong turn. And right here, where the memorial stone is exactly where, or rather right here in front, is where a 19-year-old kid, a Bosnian Serb, terrorist, so to speak, killed both the Duke and his wife, and which in turn set in place a series of chain reactions that resulted in World War I. Something else was happening in that period. In 1905, a small Cantonese man was giving a speech in Belgium, and his audience was very small. It's 30 of them, and his name is Sun Yat-sen, and he promulgated the idea of self-determination. He promulgated the idea, which in Chinese is called San Min Juyi. That means the three people principle, and the three people principles were Min Chu, Min Qian, and Min Sheng. Min Chu means nationhood. Min Qian means accountability of the state, loosely defined as democracy. And Min Sheng, he borrowed an idea from the socialist realm in Europe at that time to say that capitalism in itself is harsh, and therefore the state has a responsibility for looking after its people, welfare. And there were only 30 people in the room, 1905. And then in 1914 was when this murder of the Archduke happened. A small little Indian man, went back to India and dared to confront the British Empire at that time and say, "Sir, can I have my country back?" So if you put these two themes alongside each other, empire building and self-determination, I would have been laughed out of the door if I tried to discuss anything regarding self-determination. And it took 40 years and more for the ideas that men like Sun Yat-sen and so on promulgated and planted the seed for that seed to become a reality. Now, why this is important for me as somebody who helps companies think about the future is that it's very easy to be caught up by the strident manifestations of issues and think that those are the issues of the day. So TikTok lends itself perfectly to what I'm trying to say here. TikTok is being portrayed as a geopolitical issue. It's not. And it is really a transformation of the technology itself, and that's what we need to put our finger on and track to see where it's going to take us. So if in 1914 they put their fingers on self-determination and tracked where history was going to take nation states, we'll arrive to where we are today, where the whole idea of empire has now disintegrated, and many of the countries that were colonies are now confident nation states in their own right. So where is the technology going? Let me try and help us all visualize what TikTok, or for that matter, any digital platform, technology platform company is up against. And this timeline starts from 1983, which is when the internet was first created. By 1989, we had the World Wide Web, and then there are a number of milestones that define the shape of the internet. The iPhone put the internet on mobile devices. The Bitcoin created an alternative to the World Wide Web that was created in 1989, which helps to make the internet more personalized. Companies like NVIDIA created the hardware part of the technology that eventually introduced AI. Now, against these milestones, when we put the American companies that were created, many of them we are familiar with even up to today, Facebook, YouTube, and so on. Now, then when we see when they were created, we realize that most of the American platforms were created in the desktop era. And then they had to morph and evolve to stay relevant in the mobile era. And now they are morphing again to be transformed in the AI era. Now, the secret sauce during the desktop era was simply mastering and providing a superior search function capability. In the mobile era, a lot of it has to do, or a lot of the focus is in creating algorithms to keep users addicted. In the AI era, you will see that a lot of the algorithms can now be deployed on devices other than the mobile device. So they will be in robotics, they will be in the factories, they will be on your refrigerator, in the autonomous vehicle. So you're going to become device independent, and that will change the technology players eventually. Now, let's put the Chinese platforms and when they were created. You will immediately see that many of the Chinese platforms were created during the mobile era. And that's because the early players like QQ, Renren, when they were first created, they didn't have the kind of powerful funding that eventual players had. By 2004, the global capital market started to take a view that China was the future, and investment banks and the listing companies came out to get Chinese companies to be listed in the US. And you'll see that that was when the Chinese players took off. And it so happened it coincided with the mobile revolution. And because of that, the Chinese players were native to the mobile revolution. They didn't need to carry the baggage of the desktop era into the mobile era. And because of that, they have created incredible depth and capabilities in the mobile era that the American players didn't carry. But all of the players are subject to yet other transformations or new transformations that are evolving in the industry. So today we have the gaming platforms like Axis Infinity, Sandbox, and so on. And they don't necessarily need to be American or Chinese, but they have the added components of tokenization, of the metaverse, and of gaming that is going to transform the industry yet again. Okay, even if TikTok has aced the platform era today. Now, what is interesting about the Chinese players, by the way, the ones that were very successful in the mobile phase of the evolution of the internet, is that far more than the American earlier competitors and the earlier iterations of the platform players, is that the Chinese players have been able to go far deeper into the economy. Now, many American players today complain that they can't replicate the super app type models that the Chinese players have. Okay, but it's not just super app on the front end of what the customer sees. It also exists in the back end. And let me share with you a few of the players that I like very much. Ctrip, for example, because of the sheer scale of the customer base that Ctrip has, 67 million customers worldwide monthly, it is able to negotiate incredible deals with all kinds of travel, leisure, entertainment, and accommodation, players, and pass on some of those benefits to their customers, including absorbing cost of cancellations. And no American company can actually match the amount of benefits that Ctrip as a platform provides its customers. Didi. By far, Didi has overtaken Uber. It has 20 million drivers on file at any one time, as against Uber, 5 million worldwide. And because it has 20 million customers, it's able to become firstly profitable and secondly also invest in new technologies. So the EV cars that Didi uses are actually purpose designed to be rental cars. And the founders of Didi, Jean Liu and Willie Cheng, have really created a business model that far supersedes anything that the West is able to come up with. In the area of supply chain, we used to know just the name Alibaba, but today from within China, there are new competitors who have taken the quality and the nature of the competition to whole new levels that even Alibaba can't keep up with. Companies like Pinduoduo and Shein have mastered supply chain strategies, the logistics, the warehousing, the cost of delivery, and the relationship with originators, such that new fashion can come on stream and hit the customers very quickly before the next wave of new fashions come on stream. And all of these are done at the lowest possible cost so that it's changing the way we consume fashion cheaply worldwide. So ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok, it's got amazing number of competitors. It has Bilibili, NetEase, Youku, but the most important of the competitors, even if TikTok does not go through the problems that it has in the US, is Kuaishou. And both ByteDance and Kuaishou and also the original supply chain players like Amazon and Pinduoduo, they're all up against each other in building what is called social commerce. The idea is to use supply chain logistics, warehousing, cost of delivery against content creation. And on this front, the Chinese players are all far ahead of any of the American players today. And this is the founder of ByteDance, Zhang Yiming, who founded it in 2012. TikTok still has only less than 2% of the platforms that exist in the world today. Facebook has 15%. So TikTok still has a long way to go. But the time spent on TikTok, 5.2 billion minutes per day, has now outpaced the time spent on Facebook. But what's interesting about Zhang Yiming is that his biggest fear is not the US government. It is actually the Chinese government. Zhang Yiming started in the news industry. And one of his first initiatives is something called Nehan Tuanzi, which in English is essentially a parody on news. And the Chinese government banned Nehan Tuanzi. So he has had his share of the run-in with the state, and he had to reconfigure before he was able to figure out a model that makes money from entertainment rather than from news. So the Chinese tech entrepreneurs' real challenges are as follows. Firstly, the technology itself is constantly changing. So it's not a given that the current incumbent is going to dominate the market, whether or not there is a US ban. Second, the customer is very demanding. Third, other Chinese competitors, never mind the foreign ones. Fourth, raising capital is becoming increasingly difficult to raise capital. Today, the capital raised by the US AI players, Microsoft, Google, right down to Tesla, now amounts to about $10 trillion, which is the size of the entire Chinese capital market. And that's what the Chinese players are up against. And then comes the Chinese tech entrepreneurs challenge with the Chinese government. The Chinese government is becoming increasingly competent in regulating platform players and is very likely to put restrictions, and has already put restrictions on the AI players that makes it difficult for them to compete globally. And then comes the challenge of all the other governments, including the US government, but also governments like Indonesia, India, which have had problems with TikTok recently. Now, the Chinese entrepreneur that we know is familiar with all of these challenges. You take any one of them, Jack Ma, Robin Lee, Jane Sun, Jean Liu, and Willie Cheng of TD Chongqing. They all know how to tell their story. They all know how to stand up in response to government challenges. They all know how to keep morphing and evolving with the technology as it evolves. My favorite is Chao Changpeng, who is also known as CZ, the founder of Binance. Now, CZ is no longer Chinese. He's Canadian today, and Binance is a global company. But the Chinese entrepreneurial spirit still defines how it evolved. When CZ first created Binance, he subscribed to the idea that cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies are meant to be peer-to-peer and therefore should not be regulated. And he tried to keep regulation away as much as possible until the regulators started chasing after him. And until the US regulator, most of all, came after him, and he stood up to that. And he was accountable. And today he has struck a deal with the US government, and he stepped down as the CEO of Binance. But the business model of Binance continues. And actually, when you think about Zhang Yiming, the whole idea of TikTok comes from this person, Alex Chu, who started Musical.ly in San Francisco with his development team in Shanghai. And then when it matured, he sold that business to Zhang Yiming. And they were like kindred spirits, but both in parallel developing their own idea of what an addictive platform should look like. Zhang Yiming likes news, and Alex Chu likes entertainment. In fact, Alex started TikTok as a competition to Coursera. It's the learning platforms. And then he realized that people spend more time in entertainment and whimsical self-promotion than in education. So he turned his model and TikTok became alive. And for both of them, the algorithm is the secret sauce that makes them successful and helps them grow as they did. Now, when Zhang Yiming put the Singaporean Chu So-shi in front of the US regulator, he was doing something that all of the other Chinese platform players didn't do. Chu So-shi does not run the company, does not make the decisions in the company. He was at best the CFO of the company. But by putting him to represent the company in front of the US Congress, and then to keep insisting that he's not Chinese and therefore TikTok is not Chinese, was a total waste of time. And it reflects very poorly on the governance culture. Now, Pinduoduo is doing the same thing. And here, Chinese companies will come up against governance issues, not just with governments, but also with shareholders and with investors, because they try to hide the origins of their business models. So in the case of Pinduoduo, it's now trying to promote itself as a Dublin-based company, and the listed entity is out of the Cayman Islands or something like that. Okay, and not as Chinese as it as it is. So these are real issues that Chinese players need to deal with. So here's a question I have for those of you who are diehard ByteDance or TikTok fans from a geopolitical perspective. Would you buy ByteDance stock? It's available. You can actually buy it on EquityZen or Forge Global, although it's not yet a listed company. But based on its results for 2023, which were just recently announced, and looking at the numbers, ByteDance valuation is about 6 times price to earnings, and Tencent is 12 times more expensive. Alphabet, which owns Google, is 20 times, and Meta is 22 times. So the question here is, do you think that ByteDance will survive the US inquiry or will it survive the technology evolution that is underway and the competition that is up against? What is interesting is that despite the inquiry that is underway in Congress with a view of forcing ByteDance to sell TikTok, we can actually trust the US system. And you may think that what I'm saying is crazy because the US system has several ideologies to protect. Firstly, the freedom of speech. Secondly, anti-monopoly regulations that are in place. So even if the Congress passes a bill forcing ByteDance to divest its US-based TikTok, it then has the challenge of figuring out who should buy TikTok, and it will run immediately into anti-monopoly laws. So the truth is that all that we have seen in the US since 2018 or so, when President Trump started the process of trying to ban ByteDance with an executive order, is that there's a process that's available to all players in the US. And if ByteDance survives that process, it actually sets the stage for the company to be able to benefit from both US technology and Chinese scale. So it's now left to those of you who think of the US as a monster to put your money where your mouth is. Sure, the technology will eventually force ByteDance to consider new competitions that will come on stream, but it still has a long way to go. You know, if you watched videos and read a lot of the discussions on TikTok at the moment, a lot of it is on how horrible the United States is as a country and the extent to which it goes to in order to get what it wants. Actually, to me, that's like the constant part or the consistent part or the predictable part of the story. That's how the US has been all along. That's how the US has treated its own people, the Jim Crow Acts, the Civil War, and the corporations that competed with each other, the oil companies in the early 1990s, and right down to what's happening today on the digital front, the platforms that compete with each other, how Microsoft tried to monopolize the industry and so on. So that's, to me, is not where the story is. As I apply what actually happened in geopolitics to what's happening in technology today, I would say this, that the way in which we assess nation states, and that applies to whether it's the US or China or India or Russia or Japan, we have to take stock of how our respective countries are coming to terms with the empowerment of the individual and how they're putting in place legislations that can create a sustainable society with where technology is taking us. Now, these developments are in chunks of 14 to 20 years, and the new realities are upon us. We have to deal with them. And if we don't deal with them, it doesn't matter whether you're communist or capitalist, it will tear apart your society in the way that Bosnia was torn apart. In fact, the Balkans continued to pay the price of empire building right up to recent times. In the 1990s, there was a huge war here where the Serbians thought that they could recreate the Yugoslav empire, and it created huge instabilities that exist to this day. So, for misunderstanding what the real issue is, some parts of the world pay a price.